Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm so excited to introduce you, Katie Lockwood and Vernon Sankey. I have recently read The Way, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times, and I got so inspired that I wanted to get in touch with the authors, and I'm so happy that they're finally that they've accepted my offer of having a chat with them, because I'm delighted to share this my opinion of the book with you guys and hear more about how the book helps to kind of learn, like teaches you some tools about kind of navigating through these difficult, turbulent times, because I know it's been tough on everyone in different ways, psychologically and physically as well. And so I think just by working from the inside out, we can learn so much. And having talked to these guys earlier yesterday, I really found that this is going to be invaluable for everyone. So before I get going, I just want to say that they co-wrote The Way, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times, and it's a must read, especially if you think, if you're kind of feeling it slightly lost, or if you feel like you want to really improve your life and kind of find meaning and purpose, and you're kind of maybe unsure about how to go about it. This is a great book because it gives you hands-on details about how to really kind of use these tools to focus on your daily goals and work in daily habits to really kind of empower yourself to make stronger decisions and just kind of live in a way that's more giving. And just it kind of, I found that the books actually really taught me to kind of relax a lot more, but we will get more into depth with that. So can I start by saying hello to Katie Lockwood, who wrote the book as well. So Katie, can you tell me a little bit about your background before I delve into the questions?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you. I really appreciate us being on your channel. So it's really great to connect with the audience. So we wrote the book it was actually about 4 months before the pandemic started. So ironically, it was quite timely. And we wrote the book really with the intention of helping people to understand these tools and techniques and this knowledge as we go through these times. But it's much more than just what's happening at the moment. And it's really a go-to manual so that we are able to connect to ourselves a lot more, especially in these times. So my background is actually in philosophy and psychology. It's in NLP. I started in film, so I actually went to film school, but I was really interested in understanding the human condition, and that was really where it came into practice for me. When I started to study the philosophy, it kind of blended really nicely the psychology and the spiritual aspects, and I could sort of see how it was all connected. So the mind, body, soul is where this wholeness is so important. It's not just one aspect. We have to understand that these are all connected. So for me, that was really poignant in understanding that this is all part of of the same body of knowledge. So my background is in leadership coaching. I've worked with many different people on different levels and different profiles, and really to understand who we are at our core, so that we can really, as you were saying, live in purpose and live that meaningful life, which is really, so important right now.
Totally. And I was so inspired when I spoke to you guys yesterday, and I just got so much from the book and from the energy of speaking to you both, that I'm really delighted to have you guys on and to be able to discuss some of these points further. So just before we move on, I'd just like to say hello to Vernon Sankey. Thank you for joining us also.
Hi. Hi.
And I mean, you have a wealth of experience yourself as well. So it's great that you guys have merged both your experience and expertise and brought them together in your own kind of perspectives, and really created this gem of a book. So I just wondered, can you tell me a little bit about our viewers, a little bit about your background, or and where kind of your journey to the psychology and writing your books as well, because I know you've written a couple. So yeah.
Okay, Andrea, by experience you mean I've been knocking around a bit?
Not quite. You've been doing some amazing things. That's the
it's quite true. I'm very proud of it, because experience of life teaches you so much. But I mean, my at university I did languages, so I did French and German, and that brought me into the philosophers, the cultural changes, the Enlightenment, the poetry, psychology, reading Freud, reading Carl Jung. So my actual academic learning at university is very, very relevant to what I'm doing today. Right. But I went from university straight into business, and so my life was really a business career. Yeah. But where the two meet is that I have never been worried in my career about what job I was going to have next, or whether I was climbing the ladder faster or not fast. It never really bothered me. Okay. I just wanted to do a good job, and in particular work with people. And as I had wonderful, wonderful people. So I was very lucky to work in different countries. So I worked in Denmark and in France and in the UK and the US. And I got given very big responsibilities at a very early age. So I was running a very big international corporation at the age of 40, which was pretty young at that time. And I knew very little, but the people around me had all the knowledge. So my role was to understand how you motivate people. What is it that makes people tick? What is it that stops people burning out? What is it that actually makes people enjoy what they're doing, right? So you can see where the two start to come together. And so I'm still in business now. I'm still on the board of a very big French IT company. Right. But the point of this is that what drives my interest is actually the interpersonal relationships, the way in which people can enjoy their life. Mm-hmm. And so I felt that there was a book somewhere in here. So the first book was A Stairway to Happiness, which is a blend of cognitive psychology, I suppose, and philosophy. And then I met Katey. Yes. And I showed her this first book, which I thought was a masterpiece. Yeah. And she looked decidedly unimpressed, would be the only way. And she kept saying, there's something missing, there's something missing. There's something missing. So then I thought, well, I better try and understand, because she's an intelligent woman with a great knowledge of the spirituality side of it. And I started working on this thing, and I suddenly realized that she was absolutely right. So the Stairway to Happiness has a fifth stage, which it didn't have initially, which is the happiness of harmony. Oh. And that happiness of harmony is the spiritual dimension, which is implied in the first four, well, particularly the third and fourth stages, but isn't actually stated, and it wasn't really there. And that took us to actually start working together, and we just found we had a common interest in this. And then we thought, and then Katey was very helpful in the videos that we did together in promoting the Stairway to Happiness. And so then we decided then we'd co-author the next book. Right. And we also found that in coaching people, the blend of experience and knowledge that we have was actually very, very helpful. So rather than just having, an old bloke with so-called experience, but also having a younger woman with that experience. So here are two very different people, but actually talking the same language was very, very powerful. Absolutely. And so that's what's driven, I suppose, these opportunities that we have and the stuff we're bringing out, because we have the same ambition, which is to help as many people as possible understand how you can really enjoy your life and find peace, however disturbed the outside world is irrelevant in relation to what you can make of it. Exactly. And when you see what people go through and are still very joyful in what they do, and they have nothing, right? And you say, wow, how could these other people who have everything be so miserable?
That's a really interesting point.
And so that's really what we're trying to do, is to help as many people as possible to find their way. So that's why it's called The Way, which actually it's not original. The Zen master Lao Tzu has his book as a Tao Te Ching. is the way of being. It means the way of being. So we're not trying to copy that, but it is a way of living in a way that will enable you to understand what's happening, manage what's happening. Because once you understand it, rise above it, and then you find you can take the world stays the same, but you can rise above it and take decisions based on goodness, not on panic.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited to hear more about how we can do that. So thank you so much. That's really helpful to get an overview on what the book's real hidden message is and what you guys were aiming to portray in it, which comes across really well with all your references from Jung and Einstein and all the great kind of teachers, spiritual teachers along the way, and geniuses. So it's really lovely because it's kind of filled with all these amazing quotes that really are empowering and inspiring, as well as your words. That's what really makes it a fantastic read. And I just like to start by delving in and talking about the ego a little bit, because I know that during these really difficult times, we've seen a rise of suicide rates and self-harm, which is a real shame. And that's because, a lot of people feel a lot of pressure, given that there's been a huge growth in unemployment and then dramatic falls in GDP growth. A lot of people have had compromised schooling, so they're having to balance things at home, and there's just a lot of pressure on families now, and people that have had kind of shattered reputations. And I think what I'd love to ask at the start is to see how, it was a really interesting point that you said about when our reputation's shattered, our mental and physical health actually deteriorate. And just kind of wondering how that really does impact physically on our and on our bodies, as well as on our psyche, and how we can kind of help to navigate through these times. I know it's a real broad question, actually, and that's pretty much the essence of the book. But do you kind of what's your experience on it in terms of, with the clients that you've seen, that, have you noticed a considerable problem in that?
Shall I start, Katey?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
If I could just put it in the context, which is that...
Sorry to jump in. Katey, do you mind just muting? Because I think there is a bit of a lag, kind of an echo, if that's okay, and then you guys can swap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
I think the first thing to understand, before you even try and deal with the specific, is we need to understand who we are.
Yeah.
And when you ask that question, and we've asked that question hundreds of times to people, and they give us all kinds of answers, and they're all wrong.
Oh, right. Interesting.
So when you ask somebody who they are, they might give you their name. They'll say, I'm so-and-so.
Yes.
And then they might, as you asked us, what do we do, right? So they might say, well, I've done this, or I do that. And then, or they might say what they've accomplished, right? So I've won this, or I was in the Olympic Games. I did this, I did that, right?
Yeah.
And all of that is an illusion.
Wow.
All of that is not who we are. They're labels.
Yeah.
They are events that may have happened in the past, but they're not who we are.
Okay.
However, we are conditioned to believe that is who we are, and that's ego. That's ego.
Right.
So, and all our education is designed to build ego.
Yeah.
Because even if in a business we say it's teamwork, right? We want teamwork, but how do we reward people? We reward them individually.
Yeah.
So we're actually, and at school we're saying, you've got to help the other person, but actually it's only the one who comes to the top of the class who gets the best grades, who gets the award.
Yeah.
Right? So everything is built towards creating an illusion of who we think we are, which is ego, and it drives ego. And everything about our environment and our society is whatever people say, it's about, well, you better do well. You're on your own there. It's up to you, right? It's up to you. You get on with it, right? You fight your battle. You do everything on your own. So it's building that up, and that's actually an illusion. And of course, what happens is when that gets shattered, then the illusion of ego, which is what we've invested in this, disappears. So who are we then? So if we think we are this image of, so supposing you, I know you see this, I mean, some of the business people who come are absolutely shattered. Why? They've lost their job, right? They have invested so much in their position and the chauffeur and the bits and pieces and this and that. And when that goes, they're completely lost, utterly lost. And it doesn't matter, I'm just giving that example as a business person, but it can be a sports person. If you get a sports person towards the end of their career or they get injured.
Yeah.
In fact, there was, I think we mentioned it in one of our books, there was a young lad, 17-year-old, who was just been recruited by one of the top football clubs, and he broke his leg, and they told him, rightly or wrongly, but they told him he wouldn't play football again. He committed suicide because he had invested so much in this image.
Yeah.
And it was an illusion as well. It was a dream image. I'm going to be one of the top footballers in the world. I'm going to earn all this, have all these girls and everything.
Yes.
And when that was shattered, he was shattered. He could not recover from that. So we have to understand who we really are, and we're not any of those things.
No.
And once we realize who we really are, and that we're not alone, we're part of something much more magnificent, much greater, right? If the universe is all around, which it is, and it's everywhere you see it, we, by definition, must be part of that. Right? How could we not be? Right? So we're not separate. And once you realize that, you realize all these labels, all these ideas about yourself are just nonsense. They mean nothing, right? I mean, so I've got a degree in this and that. Who cares? Who cares? What does it mean to anything? It's a piece of paper, for goodness sake. Right? It pales into complete insignificance compared to what happens in life.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't matter. What really matters is, who are you? What are you here for? Why are you here? What's the end game? Yeah. So when we ask people these two questions, who are you and what you're here for, it takes them a long time to actually come around to really actually finding an answer to it, because ego is constantly in the way.
Interesting. So it takes a while to peel back the layers of
absolutely
who they are.
It's all this conditioning, and all this conditioning needs to be unwrapped. It's like an onion. It needs to be unwrapped.
Yeah.
You know, a small, if you look at a small baby, they are in awe. And I've got one, because I've got one of my grandchildren is 4 months old, little Benji. And when I talk to him and see him, first of all, he never blinks, by the way.
Oh.
Small babies don't blink.
Really?
Because they're so in awe of everything that they don't have to think. They're just looking at you, right? Benign. They're looking at it benignly. And the only time they cry is when they need something like food, right?
Right. Yeah.
But there's no conditioning there. We start to give them conditioning by saying, you better not cry. You know, don't do this, don't do that.
Yeah.
And we start the process, and then the education keeps it going. What they're doing in some schools now is they're actually starting to introduce a whole concept of meditation.
Yeah.
And linking that to doing good for other people, being less selfish.
Less selfish, yeah.
Because ego equals selfishness, equals it's all about me. And it's devastating.
It's a circle, because once you achieve what you want, or you think you want to make you happy, it's never enough. So it's almost like...
Absolutely. Well, you know, the thing is, if you want something, and incidentally, we can, on another occasion, we may talk about the question of desiring, which is one of the reasons for suffering, by the way. But if we want something and we get it, we are maybe happy for a tiny bit, and then we want something else. We want some more, as you just said. And if you don't get it, you're unhappy as well.
Yes. Yes.
So wanting is not necessarily the right way to look at it. And suffering is wanting. In Buddhist term, the second noble truth is that desiring, wanting, is suffering.
I see.
And that's ego, because who wants me? I want this.
Exactly. Okay. That's
so Katey's got to add to this, because she knows even more than me.
Thanks for that. That was really helpful.
I just telling on it's more about the attachment that we have to that expectation, and you know, what we're experiencing right now. I mean, we've not gone through this before, so we have to navigate through our own internal mechanism, rather than there's so many opinions, there's so much division. And that's the one thing that's really come out of this is to see that division, and that point of oneness when we speak about that is to actually realize that we are all part of this universe. It's not about judging others, and it's about really listening and consciously listening, rather than judging someone based on an opinion that might not be to your belief system. So once we understand that, and actually once we understand, we come back to that eternal truth, we understand we're actually all part of the same microcosm is the same as the macrocosm. So we're all part of that same energetic space. And I think, and it's just to realize that when we attach ourselves to all those things that we're talking about, those labels, we identify with those labels. So when those labels get taken away, it's almost like, well, who am I now? Who am I without that label? And actually just to trust in the process of, we're all on this journey, and the human journey is to be experienced without acknowledging that the external is there to push us to be a certain way. There's so many society, and the conditioning society is sort of putting us in this box of that's how we have to fit in and that's how we have to be. But actually, when we're content with who we are, then we don't need to be anything but ourselves, and to feel happy within ourselves is the space that we need to be in.
I guess that's really, really interesting that you said that. And I think another question would be, and following on from that, is how do we find out more of who we are? Because I think people do get kind of swept away with what's happening around them and who they need to be or what they're aspiring to be. And then they kind of lose sight of, or have never really sat and thought about who they really are to the core. So, and obviously now we've had these times where we've had to stay at home and had a lot of, we're not as distracted. We've had a lot more time to think, maybe. I think people are becoming more aware of their impact on the world and how they can help people more, but also thinking, okay, is this the job that I want? Is this the rat race that I want to go back to? And questioning all those things. So I just wondered, how would one kind of go about searching for that, finding their way, almost like the way of who they are? What could they implement to actually practically help themselves to really find the essence of who they are?
I always say I'm really an advocate of meditation, and just being still in the mind. We've got so much noise, we call it the monkey mind, because we're so active, and there's so much noise going on around us, and if we're watching the news or it's so much negativity as well, and we've got to understand that we're consuming that negativity all the time. So we've got to be conscious about what we're allowing into our subconscious mind. So really being discerning with what we're allowing in, because that's our power. Nothing has power over us unless we give attention to it. So once we understand that everything is energy, where our focus goes, energy flows. So when we take the energy back into ourselves, we're looking at ourselves in a different perception, and we're saying, right, what is it that I want? What is it that's going to give me meaning? What is my purpose in my life? And actually, most of us don't think like that because we're so busy. We're so busy getting from A to B. We're so busy with the technology. We just don't have that time or that space to really think about those things, and maybe until it's too late. So actually having that time now is to really think about, is this what I want? Is this giving me, what I desire in my life? And, lots of people in that rat race mentality, coming home when it's dark, coming home when it's dark, not having that time to be with their loved ones. Maybe that's given them a chance to think about, is this the life that they want to be, and are they being present in that space when they're actually being with their loved ones? So that's, meditation helps us to gain that peace of mind. And it's almost like an exercise for the mind, because we get so used to thinking that this almost allows us to be in a space where we're able to just not think, but actually in the non-thinking is when we're able to be more present with the thoughts that are more powerful to us.
And I have to say that I did listen to a few of your meditations last night, and I thought they were so profound. And I also love the fact that, when you breathe in, you think of one thing, and breathe out thinking of another. And just by noticing your thoughts, you realize, gosh, I am worried about this, and I hadn't even thought that that was even something that was bothering me. So that's really interesting that you've brought that up, because I think that becoming more mindful of our own thoughts and our monkey mind, we're able to like really peel away what our anxieties are, and see, you know, what is it that's actually causing me to feel down and I don't know why, or, you know, all of these things, and in such a tricky time. And like you said, you know, being exposed to so many, deciding what you expose yourself to is also really important. So just a quick question about actually the meditations. I don't know if you guys are putting them on the site or anything, but I think they're a great tool to help if you've never done meditation before and you think, you know, you want someone to guide you and just listen. I mean, it's great because you can just find a quiet place and just plug in and really just take it in and let it kind of take you on a journey. And I really felt that with your meditations. I've done quite a few different ones, and I felt, especially with the music and everything, very soothing, and it does just take you out of where you are and really kind of make you introspective. But is there any way that, you know, our viewers could like watch? Are you guys selling them, or is it just you kind of waiting to see what you're going to do with them? Or
well, yeah, I mean, we're creating a library of them, yes, and they will address different things.
Okay.
So the two we sent you, yes, are to get people started. Right. There's an awful lot of rubbish spoken about meditation, and it makes it sound like it's a terribly difficult exercise. And and actually I had this conversation with this lady on Facebook actually, who says, I'm having terrible trouble with my meditation. I've tried this, I can't do it. And obviously the stress that she's going through in order to try and achieve something, yeah, is part of the problem, right? Because you're not actually trying to achieve anything. You're, yeah, not going anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. It's not a race. It's not an exam. It's not a hardship. It's just letting go. Right? It's letting go. Now, we find it very hard to do that, to just let go, because, as Katey said, and Katey's answer is perfect, is we're so busy. Yeah. We're rushing around so much that we can never answer the question, who am I? Yeah. Except in silence. It's in silent reflection, just occasionally. And then we suddenly realize that all our worries are either about the past or about the future. We're either worried about what happened and are we going to correct it and is it going to be okay, or about what's going to happen next, right? Yeah. And we end up squeezing our life into a tiny, tiny little sliver, which is actually the only time that exists, which is called now. Mm. So we're by just reflecting, you are spending more time on yourself, more time now, yeah, living now. And now, if I look at you now, yeah, and I say, what's missing right now? What's missing?
What's
the answer is nothing. Right?
Yeah.
Nothing. Right? How can it be? Everything's now. Yeah. Because unless you're thinking about, oh my goodness, you know, what happened? Oh, no, I don't believe I did that. Or heavens, what's going to happen next? Yeah. Unless you've got that, then you're now. So you will only find yourself in silent reflection. Okay. And then you'll start to realize that all these thoughts are coming into your mind and you can observe them, including the thoughts of ego.
So are you saying that the ego is the main source of all our problems, in the sense that it's constructing these ideals of what we think we should be or think we should be doing, and that is what's standing in the way?
Ego means me as opposed to you. Okay. Whereas it should be us.
Okay, so that's an interesting point, because you said
about because what I see in you is a reflection of what I see in myself. Right? Right. And if I see you as something that is a person that's got beautiful capabilities, that has wonderful opportunities, that is a delight to be with, why would I ever want to harm you? And if I feel that about the world is a beautiful world. Right? Yeah. We damage it we damage it by interfering. Why are we interfering? Because we want more of this or we want less of that. You know, we're digging stuff out of the sea when we're chucking it away because we don't know what to do with it. And we're damaging our world. And then we start to think and say, hold on, the outside world is a reflection of our inner world.
Yeah.
Everything that you see around you has been done by a human mind for a reason or another.
Right.
So the world we have, with all the fears that we have, with the weaponries that we've created, you know, that I'm in this group and not that group, I'm in this political party instead of that party, is all actually a reflection of our inner turmoil.
I see.
Once you change that inner turmoil and change it, and part of meditation is to actually bring some of those thoughts into your mind, because as I think, I am.
Mm-hmm.
If I think badly of somebody, that's how I will be. If I think well of somebody, that's how it will be. Right?
Yeah.
As I think, I am. My current thoughts determine my future. So if I change my thoughts and make them positive, so will my future be. It's as simple as that.
Wow. And in terms of like developing these new habits and learning to kind of incorporate them and changing your mindset, is that something that can be done almost instantaneously, or does it take a long time to really intertwine it into your daily life and live by it? Or is it something that we could just start instantly and start slowly with? Or how long does it take to become almost second nature and to actually alter?
Well, the answer, Andrea, but I'll let Katey answer. In truth, it can be instantaneous, in truth.
Okay.
In practice, people find that very, very hard, right?
Sure.
So that a habit will probably take 2 months.
Yeah.
If it's an ingrained habit. But in truth, if you want to change now, what's stopping you?
That's it. That's a really good.
There's nothing stopping you. Now, do it now. Why not? And that's why so many of the sort of New Year's resolutions fail, because we say, well, next Monday I'll start doing something, right?
Mm.
Well, but next Monday, tomorrow never comes, right? What's wrong with now? Why can't I think positively about whatever it is now? So if somebody cuts me up on a motorway,
yes,
why can't I just say, fine, who cares, right? Instead of shouting and screaming.
Exactly.
Do I need, but that's rage, and rage, there is rage, and people have a high rage, and of course it can take some time to change that, or you can just say, hold on, that's crazy, I'll change now. So in truth, it's instantaneous. Now, the different philosophy schools will tell you that it takes so much time. And obviously the Zen school says it can be instantaneous. The Buddhist school said it will take you longer. And it depends. And in truth, human beings will tend to take longer. But Katey, you tell us about your experience on this.
Thank you for that.
No, I'd say I completely agree. I think it's the power of intention. So when you actually want to do something, as you know, you can say you can lead to a horse to water, but you can't make it drink it. So you know, so if some people have grown into a habit of negative thinking, and they don't discern where those beliefs have come from. So when we talk about NLP and our limited beliefs, you know, we've got to understand where that's coming from, where the root cause of that is coming from, so that we can actually change it. And then we'll realize how that belief system is manifesting in all of our life. Right. So when we get to the root cause, and then we are able to change that. And actually, when we observe it, when we recognize it, and when it comes up again, we can decide to take a different action. Right. And that's the power that we have. We don't realize we have that power because we always look outside of us to give us answers. But actually, you know, it's like The Alchemist, the book we always talk about. We can go all the way around trying to find something when we realize it's actually been with us all along. And actually, we've got the treasure within ourselves to be able to open that up and to self-realize what that is. And that's exactly what empowerment is to realize that you are your own savior. So you can, you know, you're the one that can change your thought at any given time. And you're the one that can, you know, change the situation by reacting or responding to that situation in a much more positive way. Yeah. And therefore, it's like the butterfly effect. And this is quite scientific. It's not just a spiritual thing. It's very science-based. We know that every action creates an equal and opposite reaction.
Right.
So, you know, if something like a pandemic has started in one part of the world, it's infiltrated and it's affected every part of the world. Now, if you think about our actions, how our actions are, you know, changing, whether positive or negative, we have the ability to change that effect based on the action we decide to take. And then that person will take a different reaction. So you know how that, it's like the pebble drops, and then that vibration of that pebble that carries out, and that's exactly what we're doing through the power of our thoughts, and how that thoughts create the action and the emotion. You know, there's actually much more power in the unseen. You know, we see the physical body, but we don't know the thoughts of the unseen. And they're the ones that are the most powerful, because the thoughts is what is actually creating the action.
Everything. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So I know that you also mentioned yesterday how it all is informed from the subconscious mind. So in terms of how we can, you know, change these daily habits and kind of change our minds to, well, reprogram our minds to be more positive. I mean, is that something that we could, how can one like delve into the subconscious mind and really get to grips with that side of thing that informs our thoughts? Is that how would you do that in a sense?
Well, the best way is through meditation.
Right.
So the purpose of breathing in meditation is to slow the process of thoughts down. Right. Meditation is about reducing the thought process and finding peace. That's what it is. Right. And so you slow that down, and one of the best ways is by breathing. By focusing on the breathing and focusing your mind on that, then the other thoughts will not come into the mind, because you're focusing on the breathing.
Okay.
Occasionally a thought will come along and you observe it, but don't get involved in it. So you observe it and say, oh, that's interesting. And then ego will come along. Maybe it'll say, how long is this going to last? Haven't we got an appointment after this, right? Observe it and let it go, and it loses its strength. You may feel angry at something, or irritated at something, and you observe it, and it goes. It's like you are the screen, and the ego is this thing that's going on the screen. Okay. It's passing, right? It's ephemeral. The screen is always there. You are the screen.
Okay. Wow.
The bits and pieces that come on the screen are not real.
Sure.
They're just little bits of film. They're illusions. The screen is real. Right. So another way of looking at this would be to say, look at an ocean, and you are the whole depth of the ocean. Your life story is all the waves and stuff that happens on the top. So sometimes there are storms, sometimes there are whirlpools, sometimes there are calm things, sometimes there's beautiful sun, right? But all this stuff's going on here, and you can observe it, but you are the ocean.
Oh, that's a beautiful metaphor.
That's who you are, right?
Yeah.
That's who you are. Now, but that is where the depth of who you are is. And then you realize all this stuff, who cares? It's meaningless, right? It doesn't matter, because I can deal with anything. I'm here, I'm in the ocean. I'm the screen. Right. All this stuff that's going in front of me is just an illusion. It's not real. So when we come back, and just to build on what Katey said, Lao Tzu says, the importance of what is depends on what is not.
Right.
So now that sounds like it's very difficult, but it's not. So if I take a glass, right, just imagine a glass, an empty glass. What's the most important part of the glass?
The glass.
Why would you say that?
Because without the glass, it doesn't exist.
Well, but supposing we put a different point of view, the most important part of the glass is the space inside it.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So the importance of what is, which is your glass, right?
Yeah.
Is actually what is not, which is inside.
Oh,
so we tend to ignore space, but space is everywhere. You can't see a cloud unless there's a space behind it.
I see.
The space is a room. The room is just four walls, right? A room is nothing. The space inside is everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you are. That's consciousness.
Right, right.
Now, when you realize the importance of that is what matters. And science has now proven that, has demonstrated that. So if I take a piece of metal, right,
Yes.
a piece of steel,
Yeah.
you will say to me, that's a piece of matter, right? That's matter.
Yeah.
And I'll say to you, no, it isn't. Because when you look at matter now, which you can under a very, very strong microscope, you realize that it's made up of tiny little pieces of energy with a lot of space between it.
Mm.
So is it matter? No, it's space.
Oh, gosh.
I wish we were more material, but we mistake the word material for things.
Yeah, yeah.
Material, a tree is something we'd like people to be more interested in. That's material. Yeah. But no, we mistake the word material.
Wow, that's a really
But by starting to observe this and understand what's important, you then realize I don't actually need very much to enjoy my life. I need very little.
Yeah, so it's almost
I mean, how many homes do you need? How many homes can you live in at one time? And how many cars can you have at one time? You can't drive them all at once, can you?
Exactly. It doesn't make you any.
No. And if you have a powerful car and you drive it badly, look what's happened to Tiger Woods.
That's true.
Right? So we don't need that. And if we can be more content with what we have and understand that there's nothing really missing in our life, we just create that miss, and that's ego. Ego wants more. Ego wants conflict. Ego can't live without it. And as soon as you allow ego, this is the judo principle, the martial arts principle, is you use somebody else's, you let the other person's energy. You don't use your energy. You don't need to. So if you let ego do whatever it wants without actually reacting to it, you don't react to it, it loses its power. It disappears.
Right.
So you can defuse any situation. Somebody gets very, very angry and you don't respond to it. You say, sorry about that, right? It immediately diffuses it. If you go against it, it's exactly the principle. It's the second law of thermodynamics. You will get a bigger and bigger reaction.
That's interesting. Wow. And
so I guess science and spirituality are very, very close.
Yes. And I suppose that's what you mentioned about us all being connected and how, our energy, everything is energy, and how we react to certain things.
Absolutely.
Even our mindlessness, when we, throw things away and we kind of think, oh, that's not gonna, we think for ourselves, oh, well, that doesn't matter if I don't recycle. And, everything has an effect. Everything has a cause.
Absolutely. We're all, everything is connected to everything else. And the scientists, so Einstein realized this, and Max Planck, they realized this. So the top scientific brains understood why this was, and they came to this realization, but that wasn't where they started from. So if you try and explain something difficult, and some of the concepts are a bit difficult, you use words, right? And so to start with, you use words, but words are very inadequate. Words are form, and they're man-made. It's very hard. How can you explain, how can you explain a beautiful, beautiful sunset in words? It's very, very hard. You can't get that thing right. So the scientist starts with words and realizes that's not good enough. There's a limit to what words can do. So then we go into mathematics and algebra, because that is much more complex and can get you much further in the explanations. Right. So relativity cannot be explained in words. It makes no sense at all. Okay. You get much, much further with maths, with these complicated formulae.
Right. Okay.
And Einstein and Max Planck got as far as they could with that. And they realized, and everybody's saying, my goodness, what fantastic stuff. Your Nobel Prizes left, right, and center. You've understood really the limits of science. And they said, but we haven't understood anything. Because what we've realized is how little we understand. This world, this magnificent universe is so complex. It's so interrelated. We have no words to describe it, and we have no mathematical formulae to describe it. It is beyond all comprehension.
Gosh.
And that is what their genius is. Their genius is that they could see that. And that's where they come back and link up with the sages of the past who were saying this all along. but they didn't have a scientific proof for it. That is what Jesus saw. Right?
Yeah.
That is what Lao Tzu saw. That is what Buddha saw.
Yeah.
They all saw this magnificence, but they couldn't prove it. And it's very hard to get that across. How do you get that across? So we try and take people to the door, and we get them, but they're then pushing the door outwards. But no, the door actually has to be pulled in. It's inward, not outwards.
Yeah, so starting from the inside and working out rather.
Absolutely. The door is not one you push out, the door is one you push in.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, we can take people there. We will help to take people there. But I'm just trying to explain some of the concepts. In the end, it's quite simple. Because if you know who you are and you realize the power of ego to damage things, right? Because as soon as if I start being defensive about anything, for example, that's ego. Yeah.
Right? So if somebody argues with me and I start feeling, well, that's ego. That's ego saying, your ego says you know better than they do. How the heck do you know that, right?
Yeah.
How often is that wrong, right? But if you can observe that by just stopping a bit, breathing, and saying, why? I'm learning all the time, right? Why would I want to be in conflict?
Right, exactly.
And it goes away. And who cares? In a day's time, who will know?
Interesting. Wow, that's fascinating stuff, because I think it makes complete sense what you're saying, and just sometimes it's being really kind of unaware of that, and then kind of wondering why people worry about certain things and are so reactive, and it's about kind of taking that time to breathe and find space and then really ask the right questions. So is that how you guys work with your clients? I know that you're both coaches. Do you kind of help them decipher this, or kind of get to the essence of who they are through and finding peace through this journey? And is that how you guys approach working with your clients?
Yes, it depends on the person. It depends on where they've got to and where they are in their life. But yes, essentially, it's to provide, the sense of hope, because it is perfectly possible to shift very radically when you understand what's going on.
Yeah.
You have to just understand what's going on, and all the philosophies of the past are of value here. If you take the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, the first truth is that the world is impermanent. Now look at COVID. If ever you wanted a demonstration that the world is impermanent, COVID suddenly appeared, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's plans world over had to shift, right? Change. Right?
Sure.
But in truth, the world is constantly impermanent. So we make plans because we think that's what we should do, except that we get attached to those plans. Yeah. And when they don't work out, we get very angry and we get cross and we get frustrated and we get stressed. Right? But if you realize that the world is impermanent, yes, I can make plans, but if I'm so wedded to those plans that they don't come out right every time I get stressed, then I'm going to have a tough time. Right?
Sure.
So the first noble truth is the world is impermanent. The second one is suffering is attachment, which is the same as being stuck in with the ego, believing the ego is who we are. And the third noble truth is remove the attachment and you remove the suffering.
And then so you kind of ride the wave of what is and focusing on the
exactly practice. What is so important. If you accept what is. Now, that doesn't mean to say, and I mean, Katey and I talk about this quite a lot, it doesn't mean to say you accept bad behavior. You don't, right? No. But you deal with it from a position of goodness, not from a position of anger.
Sure. So
and I mean, it happens in my business life regularly that things happen which are not right. Right. Now, I'm not going to let them go. I'm not happy. I'm not going to say, okay, right, because it's not okay. But I can deal with it in a compassionate way.
Sure.
And a firm way, but without causing the friction. What we're trying to do is to get it solved, not to try and get it conflictual.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so fascinating. There's so much in there. And I mean, your book...
There's a lot in what we're trying to do.
Doesn't it? And the book has some great chapters in all aspects of life, really. And that's what I think is so interesting about it. It really does kind of tackle these different areas and causes of concern, and then how you can go about helping yourself, which is really, really a useful kind of tool for kind of if you're looking to make a change, or if you're feeling miserable or tired, or if you're feeling that something's not right or something's missing. I think that's often the case. We feel that, I met a friend the other day and she said, I just feel down, but I don't know why. And I feel guilty that I feel down because, I'm fortunate. So it's almost like you can intellectualize you can feel the way you're feeling, and you can intellectualize that you're in a good position, yet you still can't seem to feel at peace. And I think that's what's really interesting about the work that you do is that you both do, is to help people really find the essence of themselves so they can find peace. And that's amazing. I mean, we've run over by quite a lot because I just got that. But I guess what I could just ask as a final thing, maybe for Katey, because what I would ask is, how would people deal with the loss? I mean, I know it kind of what we've talked about would help with this, but how, if you've lost a loved one and you're feeling really, or if you're feeling kind of really upset and angry with the world, almost, that you've lost someone that you really love due to COVID, or just in general, how could one get themselves in a better state or in a healthier mind frame, rather than feeling utter turmoil and which is an understandable reaction and a completely human emotion? How can someone build themselves up or help themselves through this time?
Yeah, again, it's really comes down to love. And I keep coming back to the heart space in love, because, we can't control life. We can't control what happens to other people. And that's the way that's the beauty of life, as well as, the hardship of life. So to experience grief and loss is to feel the memories of that person is still there, and the soul is still existing. And it's not that's death is not the end. To feel that love for somebody, that still those memories will still live on as long as as long as your life lives on. So just to celebrate that life rather than to see it negatively. And we've all got a time that we all will go from this world, and I think just to honor the time that they were here, and to feel present in the memory of that loss, rather than and it's okay to grieve. We're not saying to suppress emotions. That's part of this, is to feel those emotions and to feel that loss and that grief. But when we can turn it into something which is much more just to feel love around that grief, and to accept it for what it is, and then to celebrate it. Is my aunt died of cancer not just recently, and but I acknowledge it, and I love her, and I just feel that's a memory that will always exist. And there's so much you can do, and it actually can empower people to make positive changes, whether it's set up charities and to do, actually it makes people sort of realize that there's really being present in this moment. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, so just to be present in this moment, and to be grateful, and to appreciate that life is so precious.
Absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well done. Katey, that's a wonderful response. I just add, those who live in our hearts never die.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with feeling sad and upset. I mean, part of a grief process is actually to be able to express that. There's a lady called Elizabeth Ross Kubler, and she's a neuroscientist and psychologist, and she found there's a process that you have to go through, and you can't jump that process. The process has to take place. And it goes through anger is part of it, negotiation, and then eventually you get to acceptance, and that's depression as well. and then you start picking it up. But there's nothing wrong with feelings. You see, we're getting, part of our conditioning is to repress feelings. You know, we say to boys, you mustn't cry, you know, and deal with your own problems. I mean, what we're doing all the time is we're encouraging people to repress their feelings. Now, of course, what we don't want them is for everybody to go wild every time something's wrong, right?
Yeah.
But understand your feelings. The feelings are what they are. One of our meditations actually is exactly on this, is accept your feelings for what they are. Yeah. And by doing that and observing them and accepting them, that is perfectly, that is part of your being human, right?
Exactly.
So it's okay to feel anger. It's okay. What's not okay is what actions you take as a result of that.
Yeah.
Right? But feeling them, to repress those is completely wrong. It causes much more problems.
Yeah.
And as what Katey was saying about love is completely right. I mean, I had a lady who was extremely upset, and this was like for 2 years after her mother died. She would have in a dinner party, and I went to one dinner party with her. She sort of collapsed in tears at the table, right?
Gosh, yeah.
And so she came and said, "Can you help me? Because I am still really, really upset at the loss of my mum." Right? And I said, "Well, I'll do what I can." Yeah. And essentially, in the discussion that we had, and I'm cutting a long thing quite short, is what was happening was she would visualize occasionally, and it could be at any time, she would visualize her mum. Yeah. And her mum would be looking like she did towards the end of her life when she was in pain, looking unhappy, and it would immediately trigger this reaction immediately. And so what we did was to start to shift this image of her mum. When was it? What did you enjoy with your mum? So we used to like to go for walks in the woods with a dog, and what did she look like then? What was her face? She loved it. She was smiling all over. Wow. Replace the negative image with a positive image, right? Yeah. And slowly, and then and that worked quite well. And then I went to a party again, and there she was. We didn't know she was going to be there. She was the other side of the room, and she just looked at me and she went, that's all she did. That's all she did. That's all she needed to do. Yeah, but it was a wonderful thing. So that is the love that Katey is talking about.
Yeah.
You from a negative attachment to a positive view of a loving relationship, because that's what she was needed to keep. That's what will be there forever.
Yeah. Interesting. Gosh, wow. Thank you so much, both of you. Vernon and Katey, you've been absolutely amazing. There's so much info and insights that I think are just going to be really beneficial to all our viewers. So thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to say that you can purchase The Way, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times on Amazon. It's definitely a must read if you want to find peace and kind of change your thought pattern. And it's a really lovely read as well, because there's so much in there to kind of improve and enhance your life, even if you want to kind of be uplifted, or even if you don't see there's any issues, that you just want to, a lovely read. It's just really inspiring. So thank you so much for joining us. There's so many good tips in there. And it's been a real pleasure. So
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.